Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB Bikini Pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. This competitor fell in love with the sport back in 2007 after starting in the WNSO and winning her pro card in this league, where she competed until 2009 before she decided to start a family. After 8 years of commitment to her 4 kids, at the age of 40, she decided she wanted to go after her pro card in the IFBB. She hit the NPC stage in 2017 and competed in 5 regional shows and 2 national shows before earning her pro card in 2020 at North Americans. She then went on to compete in 3 pro shows in both the Open and Masters classes, and she now coaches for Nutrition Dynamic, where she supports bikini athletes in optimizing their competition prep to look their best and transition post-show with their long-term health in mind. Welcome to the show, Laura Tarbell. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me here.
You're welcome. Before we get into all the fun stuff, I gotta ask if there's anything you do or think about right before your heel hits the stage.
Yes, actually, there's a couple things that I think about. The first one, just as you mentioned, like just walking onto the stage, as I'm walking up the stairs and waiting to actually go out into the lights, I am reminding myself to be present and really enjoy the moment, enjoy, the culmination of all the work that I've been doing over the past months, years. And in the past, I've had a bunch of stage fright, and it started when I was younger, 7th grade. I remember it, a piano recital, and, I was shaking uncontrollably. And I've taken a lot of steps to get past that and be able to be present so that I can enjoy that moment and take that time for myself. So I remind myself to be present, or that I deserve to be present in that moment. And as I'm going through, my routine and things like that, I'm able to then go through the checklist of, the things that my coach, cues me to do is, standing up taller and vacuuming, and, my hips should be this way and all that kind of thing. I'm able to execute a lot better when I am present. So that's what I remind myself of as I'm stepping onto the stage.
I think that's really powerful. And I especially love that you said you deserve to be present, because I think we are so in tune throughout our whole prep. We're so focused, and in our improvement seasons as well. And we get to that moment before the stage, and that's something we've been working really hard for. And we really are worthy of being fully there and experiencing that moment and having it be a representation and a culmination of all this effort and dedication we put in on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, definitely. And taking like a lot of my life being mom and coach in multiple capacities is about me serving other people. And I really want to take that moment for myself and just block everything out. And I feel like, as competitors, as women, athletes, that we deserve to have that shining moment for ourselves and to block everything else out.
Yes, I really appreciate that. And I'm excited to just learn from you. And like I told you before we started recording, I think that your story and your journey is really cool. And I have a lot to talk to you about. And I think it'll just be an awesome opportunity for listeners. But I want to start with your journey through competing and how you went from other leagues to the NPC and eventually, now the IFBB. So first of all, what inspired you to get into competing? And then why did you decide to try out all these different leagues?
Yeah. So it's kind of, I kind of fell into it accidentally. So I've been an athlete all my life, but also a musician. And after my first degree in college, I just kind of communications degree, I just wanted to graduate. My main focus was sports. I played college basketball and I was like, that's what it's all about. After I graduated, I got married, moved to upstate New York, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I auditioned, but I knew I loved music. So I thought, well, maybe I'll be a music teacher. There's a conservatory about 45 minutes from where I live. And I was like, well, maybe I'll audition. And I got in, ended up graduating in vocal performance and becoming a music teacher for a couple of years. And my goal at that time was actually to get into like Christian music. And so I went to an audition in New York City at a big convention and did some musical auditions, but then there was a seminar for fitness modeling. And I was like, well, hey, that might work for me. So I went there and I sat in the front row, asked a couple questions. So because the presenter was the owner of a fitness modeling agency. I was like, well, I'll try to get his attention. And I asked him a question and he said, I want to see you after this presentation is over. So I was like, okay. And he said, come back. He was doing live auditions also like later in the day. He said, come back, see me at the live auditions. And so I went to go see him. I had like a little sports bra and shorts on, he wanted to see my physique and I signed with him right there.
Wow.
And it's like totally crazy. Like a week later, I was in Florida doing a swimsuit modeling, like gig for a swimsuit catalog. And it was like this whirlwind kind of like fantasy, here I am modeling all of a sudden. And I met some girls at that job and we were talking about how to get yourself more exposure. And they said, you should do these fitness competitions. So I said, all right, I'll look into it. And I hired a coach who lived 2 hours away. So it's one of those classic stories. Like I'm driving 2 hours. I live in upstate New York and she was in Canada. So I was like through the snow, both ways, and did my first show with her as my coach and absolutely fell in love. I prepped for 7 weeks and won my pro card with a smaller federation called the WNSO and fell in love. It was like the perfect combination of stage performance and athletics for me. I love playing dress up, getting my makeup done, that side of things, getting on stage, like that adrenaline that comes with it. And then I also love the competition and the athletic side and being able to push myself in the gym. So yeah, it just seemed like the perfect fit. So I started competing with them, went to their world championships in the bikini division that year, got third in the pro division. I was trying to also get my pro card in their category called fitness model at the time. And I ended up getting second and like missing my pro card by one spot. So that was disappointing. But then after that, I thought, you know what, I want to try some different things and just experience what else is out there. So I coached myself for a little while doing Fitness America and met Kathy Savage through that competition federation. Ended up signing up with her, learning about some other federations, and tried OCB at that time, tried WBFF. It was the first year of WBFF. I did that competition. I actually did figure with them for some reason. And then, so I did that until I had my first set of twins. And then decided to take a step back. I didn't compete between sets of twins. And I ended up I did a lot of fitness modeling in that time. Ended up becoming a coach for Savage Fitness and really got to know all the different federations there. Coached a couple people for OCB and And yeah, so that's kind of how I got my feet wet into the coaching industry.
Wow. And were you into fitness before you went to that modeling casting call seminar thing?
I was still, I was still working out on my own, playing some basketball. I was a Pilates instructor at the time. I had a lot of back issues. I jammed my spinal cord when I was in high school and couldn't walk actually for 2 weeks, and kind of worked my way back. And Pilates is really like the thing that is my savior. Excuse me. And so I'm a huge proponent of Pilates and became an instructor. So I was still exercising and going to the gym, but nothing like the commitment that I took on when I started prepping for a show.
What changed in your life when you started to prep for a show?
I think the focus, like really the drive that I had a purpose with my fitness. To just working out just to work out is fun and it's fine. But the goal to build muscle and to improve my physique aesthetically was something new for me. And that really drove me to become better and learn more about like, what am I doing in the gym? Because Pilates is very different from weight training. And so really, educating myself about nutrition, about training, and how I can optimize all those things was what changed.
Interesting. Okay. And then you tried all these different leagues and competitions, and you had worked with a coach in Canada, then you worked with Savage, and you became a coach for Savage. So what did you learn in those experiences of different federations and then coaching other competitors? What did that teach you that maybe influenced your journey as a competitor?
Sure. It really, in terms of coaching, it really gave me insight into the coach that I want to be. I saw how I want to treat my my clients, just giving them the respect that I think I deserve as an athlete. I try to show for them. So responding in a timely manner, responding completely, and being sensitive to what's going on in their life as well. So it taught me the coach that I want to be. It also gave me a really good perspective about different federations and how they can fit different types of athletes. Like, the girls who don't want to do the theme wear and stuff like that. And, helping guide them in their journeys on what federation would be good for them. I think is what that taught me, and also good for myself. For a while I did like doing the theme wear and things like that. But as I think progressed in my own journey, I really was focused more on the physique aspect and less about, the outfit and things like that. So that's what drew me more toward the NPC and IFBB.
Okay. And that was not until after having both sets of twins. So let's just talk about having two sets of twins. Like, what does that look like for you?
Well, logistically, there's a lot of figuring out to do, especially like when they were younger. Like, how are we going to get all the car seats in, and all the kids, settled and good, how are we going to get them dressed? That was a task in itself. But as hectic as it is, I'm extremely grateful to have all of them and to be blessed with children. At one point we thought maybe we couldn't have kids. Before my husband and I got married, he was diagnosed with rectal cancer. And as a result of his surgery, he cannot have kids naturally. And as a result of my initial contest prepping, and we can talk about that a little bit too, the nutrition aspect, and intensity of it, I guess, length of it, I did not have a cycle. And in total, I didn't cycle for 7 years. So I had my first set of twins 3 years into that. And, my doctor at the time was just like, yep, everything is fine. When you want to have kids, just come let us know. So we went through, the first round of ICSI, which is where they create the embryo and then implant it. The fresh cycle, that worked. So we got the 2 boys with that cycle. And, we had these embryos left, we had 6 of them left, I believe. So we ended up doing 3 frozen cycles that none of them took. We thought we really want to try for a girl. So on that 5th fresh cycle, we ended up getting 2 embryos. We put both of them in and they both took, and that's how we got the second set of twins, which are both girls. So that's where the twins came from. And it's a great thing. And it's also, a struggle at times, because as a mom, I want to spend time with each of them and really be present with each of them individually. But it's hard, I would say, because they're always together, you know what I mean? And they're doing things together, they're both in basketball, they're both in skating and things like that. But I really make an effort to take that time with each one of them so I can get to know them on a personal level and have that relationship with them.
I really like that. And I think that's such a cool story to go from not knowing if it would work out to now being blessed with 4 kids. And what was the age gap between the boys and the girls?
It's 3 years.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And so like a lot of times through prep or even out of prep, when they're driving me crazy, I remind myself, like, I am so blessed to have children in the first place, that I should be thankful that they're like crazy active kids and healthy kids, that really changes my perspective. I reframe the way I think about things.
Did you always want kids?
Yeah, definitely. My husband and I always wanted kids. And we had talked about that if this didn't work out, we may adopt. But that was, going to be past all of the efforts with IVF. And thankfully, we were able to have kids on our own. So
yeah, that's awesome. And when you had decided to start your family, were you worried at all about stepping away from the stage at the time, or did you have plans to return?
My thoughts were just kind of see how it goes. I had no idea what a lifestyle change it would be to have children. Is you kind of get like hit by a bus a little bit, and then with your first set of twins, I should say. I don't know what it's like to have one child. A lot of people ask me, what's it like to have twins? I'm like, well, I don't know what it's like to just
Not
have
two.
one. So, that first month, I would say, having the boys, it was a struggle. It's kind of a blur. I nursed both sets of twins for 10 months and just figuring out how to do that logistically, how to get them around. Fitness was kind of the last thing on my mind. I would take them out for walks and things like that. I knew eventually I'd get back to it. But really just recovering from pregnancy, having healthy babies and getting myself healthy as well was a priority at that time.
So what was that period of time like as far as prioritizing your health over those 8 years while raising your family? Like, what did that look like?
That looked like it was a lot of what I could do at home for a while. So dumbbell workouts, treadmill workouts. I got really into running at that time, lots of road races. I did a couple triathlons. Wow. And then Pilates too. Pilates was kind of my break. So in the evenings, 2 or 3 times a week, I would go out and teach Pilates when my husband got home from work. And I started getting into Pilates for runners and made actually some DVDs for that specifically. It was featured in Oxygen at one point, and so the big focus there was on these road races and Pilates, just because that's what worked with my lifestyle at the time.
That's super cool.
Mm-hmm.
And how does your schedule with prepping now compare to before you had kids?
Well, before I had kids, I was teaching. I was a music teacher. And so it's actually kind of similar, except for after school. That's completely different, but I still get up early, do my workouts. Before, I just did my cardio in the mornings, and then I would go to work, get done at 3, come home, eat, go to the gym. And then after that, my husband and I would have dinner, spend the evening together. It was pretty stress-free. Now I still get up in the mornings. I get up at 4 a.m. most days and train, do my cardio as well, so that I'm done by 7. And then it's at home, get the kids ready for school, get them to school by 8:15, come back. I work from home, just online trainer and nutritionist. And I work until about 2:30, having Zoom calls with my clients and updating program, all that kind of stuff. At 3, I pick them up, and then it's, all the kids stuff. So homework, kids activities. I coach a lot of their sports. So I coach soccer for all of them. This past year, I've been coaching basketball for all of them as well the last few years, just, like bitty basketball type things. This past year was the first year that I coached for our middle school, 7th and 8th grade boys. So it's a team that was not my own children. And that was a big time commitment for our family, but really great experience. Something I never thought I would do was coach middle school boys basketball. But I absolutely loved it. And next year, the boys should be on that team. So it'll be nice to have that experience with them.
How'd you get that?
The basketball coaching position? Yeah. So I've been coaching their travel team and their bitty basketball team for the last few years, and just kind of got to know the coaches from the schools. And the varsity coach in October messaged me and said, "Hey, what would you think about coaching middle school boys?" And I was like, "What? Me?" And he's like, "Yeah, we think you would be a great fit. We know that you have a solid foundation and how to teach the game, really great rapport with, students and kids of that age. And we would love to have you do it." So I said, "Yeah, let's try it." And it worked out really great.
That's so cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It sounds like you have a really active, involved life with your kids, and I really admire that. And I'm wondering about their role in your prep and your goals as well.
Yeah. So one of the reasons that I came back to competing, just besides my love for the sport and for bettering myself, is that I wanted to show them that if you have a goal with something, that you can make things work. Like, just because you're a mom or a working mom doesn't mean you have to lay aside your personal goals. That's when my girls become moms. I don't want them just to give up on fitness and nutrition just because they're a mom. So I want to model that for them. So that's a reason why I decided to get back into it and say, "Hey, you know what? It would be really cool if I could get my pro card before having kids and also after having kids." So that was part of the reason for getting back into it. But I do talk to them about kind of where I am in the journey and when a competition is coming up, and get them involved and ask them to help me, really. It's a great springboard for talking about nutrition and workouts. So we often, end up talking about that at various points throughout my prep. Well, what's going on now? Why are you doing this, Mom? And it's a really great teaching tool, I think, for them.
Is that how you envisioned life would be when raising kids and competing at the same time?
I think so. When I first thought about getting into it, I was like, you know what, I've got to really be mindful of not disrupting our family environment. You know, I didn't want them to feel like competing takes away from my relationship or my involvement with them. There does come a point when, you know, you're deep into prep, a couple weeks out, where I'm more tired, you know, more time doing cardio. I try to work that around different times that they're doing things. So I try to get it all done during school or all done before they are even awake and they even realize that's what I'm doing. So that it doesn't take away from what we're doing as a family or something that they want to do individually. Like, you know, their sports, or my son does private basketball lessons. I don't want that to interfere with anything that I'm helping them to do. They do ask me a little bit about food, like with dinner time. I think that's a big question with moms and prepping, as how do I make family dinners work? And a lot of times they're eating the same stuff as me. I just kind of fancy up their things a little bit more. I'll add cheese, I'll add sauce, make chicken, broccoli, rice, or whatever, turn it into a casserole for them. And then I just have it separate. Sometimes when food is low, there does come a point when I eat something different than they do. And they do notice that. They're sharp little kids. And they ask me like, Mom, why aren't you eating the same as us? And so I explain, like, I'm getting close to my show, like my food, my macros are really low. Like they know macros. We talk about nutrition labels, like all that kind of thing. So I think they kind of understand it. And I say, you know, like we're having steak and it has a lot of fat in it. And I don't have a lot of fat macros right now. So I'm choosing to have fish instead. I think what's important is not necessarily what I'm eating versus what they're eating. It's more so that we're still eating together and having that rapport with each other through dinner time. And that's what I want them to remember, is that, you know, we're still eating together all the time and having that family moment.
That's really special.
Yeah.
I love
Thank
how
you.
you prioritize that. Of course. I think it's you also bring up a really good idea of like incorporating the same types of foods in different ways with them. And then when you're explaining like the food that you're eating, it sounds like it's explained from a choice and performance and purpose rather than like, oh, well, you know, enforcing a negative relationship with food. It sounds like you're really considering like performance and where you're at and educating them with that.
Yeah, I definitely try. And I mean, on the flip side of that, I talk about, okay, now mom's is in improvement season and she's eating different things. And why are we doing that? And, you know, why do I have a shake for breakfast every morning when I come home from the gym? You know, it's a springboard for a lot of different talking points around nutrition. And I want them to have a lot of different perspectives about macros and nutrition and how it works, you know, both the perspective of when you're dieting and when you're, you know, reverse dieting.
Yes. And how does your training and nutrition vary from improvement season to prep?
Yeah, I would say the nutrition, what I choose to eat, like the basic or the base of the meal pretty much stays the same. Sauces change, you know, as I'm going down in macros, you know, those things go out the window. And, or, you know, like for example, like with rice cakes off season, I'll have caramel rice cakes, but then, you know, we're transitioning down, then you have just the plain ones. And I say that like the basics of the foods don't really change. It's portion sizes, sauces, you know, I'll use honey in the improvement season, things like that. And more cheeses, like more dense choices in terms of calories in improvement season. So that I'm not getting like a big veggie belly or anything like that in improvement season. But really my food choices don't change a lot. It's just the volume that I'm eating at one time change.
Yeah, I think that's important to talk about is volume eating. And I think
Mhm.
that's something that I think competitors do too much of, and it can definitely be negative in prep. And then I think in improvement season, sometimes because in prep they did it so much, they
Mhm.
continue to, and then they feel really full. They don't want to bring their macros up. Things like that happen. And really, it's like you don't have to eat fat-free items anymore. You don't have to,
Right.
like, you don't have to choose zucchini spiral over a regular noodle. And I think it can be a difficult transition to start being okay, like testing out more nutrient dense, lower volume foods because people are fearful of hunger. And rather
Mhm.
than, but, and which makes sense because you just go through months of dieting and you probably got pretty hungry at the end, and your mind is like, feed me volume, get the most out of every calorie you can. Like these beliefs start getting reinforced. So I just wanted to make a point, since you brought that up, of like, when you transition into your improvement season, it's so
Mhm.
important to be okay with even the discomfort of potentially being hungry as you're trying to incorporate new whole or maybe more nutrient dense foods, like a
Mhm.
whole cheese versus a fat-free cheese. It might be scary at first, but I personally find like, even if I have regular whole cheese in prep, I'm
Mhm.
so much more satiated than when I
Mhm.
used to like try to get only fat-free this and the lowest carb that.
Yes, totally. Because that kind of thing, it doesn't actually satisfy
Mhm.
your cravings. So I definitely see that. And like ice cream is one of my kryptonites, I guess you could say. And I mean, I don't eat a ton of it, but even through prep, I will have a bite or two of it and put it into my,
Yeah.
it sounds like very OCD, but I'll measure it 2 bites and I'll put it into my food log just because it makes me feel more um, satiated and quote like normal, so to
Mhm.
speak. Um, and it's something that helps me get by. So even that kind of stuff doesn't change for me.
Yes, and it's better to like continue to incorporate some of those foods you really enjoy than to be like, I can never have these on prep, and
Oh,
create that whole mentality.
yeah. I mean, that happened to me in the beginning. So when I first started competing in 2007, um, the coach that I had, great coach, lover,
Mhm.
gave me a very bro meal plan and no changes. This is what you eat. There was probably maybe 15 foods on there. And I ate that. Let's see. Well, I would say probably 2 years. That same food plan because she told like we prepped for the show. Then she said take one day off, get back into your meal plan. And I went through 3 preps with her like that. Never
Mhm.
any variation to it. And then after my last show, she's like, okay, great. You get to go into an improvement season. You're going to stay on the meal plan. And one day a week, you get to eat whatever you want. So I was
Mm.
like, oh, okay, that's how this works. Okay, well, I'll do it. So I stayed on that meal plan, which was like no fats, like it was really strict.
Yeah.
And then one day a week, my free days would get a little bit more and more and more excessive as the
Mhm.
time went on. Um, and that whole thing with like your body adapting, to the low calories. And then I would have that higher day and I would gain weight. And initially, the weight would come back off. But as I
Right.
started to do that more, it would stick. And so then I would feel like I had to diet harder during the week to make up for all the stuff I did on Sunday. And then my Sundays started getting more and more out of control because the Monday through Saturday was more restrictive. And so it was
Mhm.
like this big swing throughout the week. And a lot of like what I realize now, I didn't know at the time what was happening. A lot of orthorexic thoughts, I can't have peanut butter. I can't have ice cream, like heaven forbid you have ice cream. And going out to eat, that was like a big trigger for me. I remember going out to eat with my husband and some friends at one point, and I had like a salad with some shrimp on it and lemon, like squeezed lemons. And I was starving, and my husband was like, "You're not anywhere close to a show. Why don't you eat something?" And I was like, "I can't. It's not on the plan."
Until Saturday when I can binge.
Exactly. And then it was like 2-3 trips to Dairy Queen and feeling horrible later and guilty. And I got myself into a little bit of, a bad cycle. And it was honestly macros that got me out of that, and learning more about food. Like, hey, a piece of bacon is 3 grams of fat and 3 grams of protein. Like, it's not going to break your day. It's okay if you have that. So just teaching myself and educating myself more about food choices really pulled me out of that and lifted that weight for me. So I do love macros, with given that freedom to choose, and especially like as a mom with changing schedules, and we're at tournaments or whatever, and I don't want to bring all my meals with me. Maybe I bring one meal in a bar or something, but then we end up being there longer. Like, it's okay. I can find a meal at a restaurant and it's not going to break my progress, even in prep. So that's, I think, that was a really big game changer for me, is learning about macros. And that happened probably 2013 or 2014. But I do still feel like there's a place for meal plans. It's a great teaching tool for beginners to give them the structure that could potentially be how they eat on a regular basis. At lunch, you need to have a protein, a carb, and a vegetable, or whatever it might be, so that they get that balance and enough throughout the day. And then you can start playing with a little bit as they start understanding about how much food they really need to be eating. And I also think meal plans are great when you're deep in prep and you don't have a lot of food. Because I've gotten to like 4 p.m. sometimes and I'm out of macros and I'm like, oh no.
Yes.
Yeah. I just want to go to bed like at 5 o'clock so I can get up tomorrow and eat. And also in improvement season, like right now, my calories are really high. And if I don't plan it out, I'm going to end up at the end of the day, with 150 grams of carbohydrates to eat. It's 8 p.m. and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do to eat this much food right before I go to bed, and not have an upset stomach. So I think there's a place for macros and a place for meal plans. But the meal plan aspect doesn't have to be a forever. And I think that's what got me mentally in trouble, like feeling like in a food prison, because I never saw, in the beginning, I never saw where the end was. It was just like, okay, here you go, do this for 6 days. And then one day you get something different. And there was no like changes.
Yeah.
So I think that's, it's important to have like the timeline for that, for a meal plan when working with clients.
Mm-hmm. I like that you were able to explain the benefits of both, because there's definitely a benefit. And I think it's helpful sometimes for especially people who are new into any sort of fitness plan to have that guidance and that support and understand. Plus, if a meal plan includes options that a person might never think to have, like if a coach finds out their client's favorite, I don't know, food is chocolate, and they put chocolate in every day's plan, the client might be like, you can do that, and they start to learn. And I think that's like, there's a great opportunity, like you said, to learn with meal plans, where that can help clients to understand there's a benefit to many of the foods, and we can learn to incorporate all foods that we enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agree with that. I remember putting an Oreo into one client's nutrition plan, and she was like, what? I can have an Oreo? And then she was like losing weight with the Oreo. And I was like,
it happens.
It can work. And I showed her like how it all added up, and with the carbohydrates and the fats. And she was like, wow. So I think that, giving people the freedom to eat and not be so stressed about what they're eating also helps with body composition change. Because stress is a monster and we want to make that monster go away.
Yes. And you had that experience with the restrictive mentality and seeing or kind of demonizing certain foods. And I had the same experience as you, where it was like super strict meal plan. And then, and this was not when I was competing. This was before competing. I was following that lifestyle, and then I'd binge on the weekends, and like it was okay. And I'd literally go from, not even kidding, like 12 a.m. to 12 a.m. Like it was bad. Where the moment that it was the day that I was allowed, it was like I'd be raiding the cabinets as soon as I could. And then right when it was midnight, I legitimately stopped. Like I definitely have always had a lot of discipline, but that was a negative exercise of like restriction really like reared its head in those days of my life. And I think learning about the benefits of food is definitely important. And it sounds like you found the best approach for you. And I know right now you're choosing to take time off since you had been prep dieting for the last 4 summers. So what are your plans and goals moving forward in this sport?
Yeah. Well, goals long-term is to win the new, win a Masters Pro Show, but then they're having like a new World Championships for Masters, I believe. I was going to try to push for it this summer, but it's on my daughter's birthday. So that is out. And I think it was actually a great opportunity to give my body some rest. Because I haven't taken time off. I should say I've taken time off, but not a long time off, to really let my body recover, hormonally, digestively, things like that. And give myself a chance to build the places that I do need to build based on judges' feedback. So goals are definitely to come in, like not just trying to get into first call outs, but trying to get in that first position. Like that's what I'm aiming for. And so I want to come back, start prepping probably January or February of 23, with a really good base of muscle. I don't want to get on stage again and have someone say, you don't have enough glute muscle. Like, I don't want to hear that ever again. So that's my goal. And also to have just, the healthiest prep I can. Hopefully, I always have to push pretty hard with prep to get my body to a place that it needs to be. Potentially if I take more time off, maybe I don't need to push as hard, if, keeping composition good throughout this improvement season. So that would be a goal as well.
Definitely. And you have made a lot of changes to your physique over the years. And from my understanding, you had a short break from 2017 to 2018, a longer break from 2018 to 2019, and again, 2019, 2020. What do you think attributed to your physique changes in those years? And what are you doing maybe differently or similarly to support your goals now?
Yeah, I think in those like 2017, 2018, the timeline is a little fuzzy. I started really learning more about resistance training and optimizing, building my physique. Before, I knew a lot about workouts and, general, getting people in shape and looking great. But really like optimizing, okay, we need more medial delt. What are we going to do? How are we going to train to make that happen? So I took some resistance training specialty courses and learned a lot about, I would say it was a step up from any anatomy courses I had taken in the past, like with Pilates or personal training, and then also optimizing hypertrophy. And one of the things that I think about all the time in the gym is the thought that when I'm lifting a weight, it's like I'm lifting a sleeping baby. And so it takes out any momentum, any type of, moving too fast that would take away from building that muscle and focusing on what's happening internally instead of externally. Like external would be more like, I'm curling 30s and, moving quick, I'm getting it done. And, that looks great from the outside. On the inside, I might not be getting as optimal engagement as I could be if I was moving slower, really mentally focused on squeezing that muscle and using 20-pound weights. So learning more about that, and learning more about how to push myself in the gym, how far can I really go until I max out, I guess. So that was part of it. After I got my pro card, I had gotten more into the functional nutrition aspect of things and learning more about optimizing things functionally as a bodybuilder. And I had my first Dutch test done, and it showed that I was very low androgen. So androgens are a metabolite of testosterone and really involved with muscle building. And so that was like a light bulb moment for me. You're saying, oh, this is why I'm working so hard. And like, I feel like the progress is so slow, like I'm a hard gainer. And I felt like I had really maximized what I could do on my own with my own potential, without any extra supplements. So at that point, I started using a SARM, just low dose SARM. What is it? Laxoplex figure. Was a plant-based SARM. And I mean, bringing up my androgens, and it really made a difference, I think, in my physique over the course of the year that I took that, between 2020 and 2021.
That's interesting. So you decided to start optimizing your training. I want to go back to your point about lifting a sleeping baby. I think that's such a cool cue. I love that. I also think it's great that you shared that you considered like other options. Now, did you retest and notice a difference after implementing that?
I did. Androgens actually went up. So I was about mid-range there. And that's something I think if you are going to add in supplements, I mean, really any kind of supplements, if you're adding like HRT, anything with that, even if, it doesn't have to do with muscle building, that's something that you need to monitor, testing at least every, well, it depends on the person, but, 3 months or so, with types of hormones, sex hormones, thyroid hormones, you need to monitor if you're going to be taking some things to optimize those to make sure you don't overshoot. And so, I did that to make sure that I was not going overboard with androgens, and yeah, it helped a lot. So continuing to monitor is definitely important.
Absolutely. And did you have concerns about taking SARMs, or how did you get comfortable with that idea?
I did a little bit just because it was something new, but I think, I educated myself all about it, and, knew that if I test, I could always stop. And if I kept a monitor on it, that I would be okay. So I felt after, the first time that I retested, I was like, okay, this is working. Things are good. I feel great about it. And now I recommend it to my clients who fit that model, who also have, low androgens, who are concerned about body composition or physique building. It's something that I would recommend to my clients. Now, like any coach that doesn't do a testing before you start taking something like that, I would see that as a red flag. And because if you already are high androgen and then you start taking an androgen receptor modulator, it's going to shoot up, and then you're going to get like PCOS or something like that. And that's not a place where you want to go.
Definitely not. Yeah. Like be responsible if you're going to do anything.
Yeah, definitely.
And that goes even for vitamins and minerals, right?
Totally. Yeah. Even taking something as simple as like vitamin D, if you overshoot it, it's going to have negative consequences. So it's something that you need to continually monitor.
Yes, definitely.
And a lot of people, I think, like feel good. And so they think, well, I don't need to get tested. I don't need to do blood work. I don't need to do a Dutch test. But I think that's a great time to test, actually, because then you see what your baseline is. If you're someone going into a prep, you need to do a test first and see where you are, where everything is quote unquote good. Because as you go into a prep, things are going to change. Hormones are going to go down. Your thyroid might get hit, adrenals, might be factored in. So, you need to know where you need to get back to have that normal, quote unquote, level.
So that leads me to a question that I wanted to ask you, which is, do you believe there are times when competing cannot be healthy actually, or isn't even justifiable as healthy, even for someone taking the most functional approach possible?
Yeah. Because it can, going too long, stringing out a lot of shows in a row, staying lean for too long is definitely going to have negative repercussions long term. And I talk to my clients about this. I don't want you staying lean for longer than a few shows, maybe 2 months, and then we need to come out of it. So I definitely think there's a time when it can get too extreme. It's extreme is enough as it is, but staying in that place too long is going to be not good.
And how lean is too lean to stay for an extended period of time?
I honestly think it's dependent on the person. You need to look at a lot of functional factors, going in, like having their cycle, what's going on with thyroid, what are their adrenals doing, energy levels throughout the day, if they're just, dragging. And that's part of things that come in with prep. But when it's happening over a long course of time, that's when it needs to be pulled out. So, like for me, according to the body scans that I got down to like 6% body fat, and that was fine for me for a couple weeks. But somebody else, might start losing their period at 12% body fat. So it's important to monitor and take it individually, case by case when you're thinking about these things.
Yes. And are there other biofeedback markers you're looking for when you're working with competitor clients?
Yeah, definitely GI distress, bloating, not constipation. That's something that I experienced for a little while through a couple preps. Let's see, the brain fog, if they're not able to function at work, that's a big red flag. Looking at all the different systems of the body, what is stress like for them? If they're having high anxiety about everything, it's probably not great to keep putting more stress of prep into their life. So lots of different biofeedback markers that we would look at. How are they sleeping? If they're having crazy insomnia, it's not good to stay in a prep.
So how would you convince a competitor who maybe has been taking more of a old school approach to the sport to consider a more functional approach?
I would really encourage blood work and education on what can happen when being too rigid and too bro, I guess, with the approach. A lot of it has mental aspects too. And if mentally they're, not doing well, I would really encourage them to seek, therapy and someone to talk to about, opening up food choices, coming out of a prep, just for long-term health in mind. And then also, a lot of education for them about macros, getting out of a rigid meal plan, about what macros really are all about and how they can lead to more freedom. So yeah, I think education and testing would be the way to go.
Yeah, and you definitely provide a lot of great information and education on your Instagram. That was something that I was really drawn to and appreciated, is how in depth you go in explaining like the concepts that you're approaching or talking about.
Thank you. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. Of course. I was hoping you could actually talk to us about how periods impact performance.
Sure. So as you're going through the different phases of your cycle in the month, depending on when estrogen is high or low, or when progesterone is high or low, your body is in, or it has different like superpowers, is what I'd like to call it. So when estrogen is coming up high, in the beginning of your cycle, when both estrogen and progesterone are low, that's a time to kind of pull back a little bit. We like to have our clients, like during their actual cycle, take a little bit of a break, maybe some rest days, work on mobility on those couple days. And then as estrogen starts increasing, as you're getting toward ovulation, that's when you're in your superpower and you want to start like really hitting the gym hard. Estrogen is very mTOR based, so building. And it's a great time to push yourself in the gym. Then as estrogen starts to decline and progesterone comes up, progesterone is calming. So as you're getting like toward the end of your cycle, maybe the week or so before your period, that's when you want to put in maybe some workouts, like a deload week, workouts that aren't quite so as intense, quite so focused, to help capitalize on that progesterone coming up and the estrogen dropping. So that's how we set up the cycle syncing to help competitors optimize their hormones.
And do you think that makes an impact on the ability to maintain a healthy cycle?
I do. I think working with your hormones instead of against them is really important. If you're trying to, push yourself when progesterone is high and it's the calming hormone, it's not the building hormone, that you're working against yourself. I think it's also nice to have set times when you are supposed to pull back a little bit. I work with so many people that come into Nutrition Dynamic who never take breaks, who never take deloads, and they're burnt out. And I think deloads are so important to let your body recover, and they should be happening often. Especially as we get a little bit older, we need more of those deloads. If you keep pushing, hormones overall are going to start to go down, just like they do in prep. And that's something that we want to avoid. So, working with your body's hormones again is going to give you greater potential for long-term success and consistency.
I really appreciate you explaining that. That's a really great explanation.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I have like so many different and random questions for you. And I'm wondering where I take this next, because, well, let me start here. You know a lot about coaching. You coach other competitors. You take an approach that sounds to be unique and more so like the new approach to bodybuilding that people are starting to consider and open up to. How does your background in education influence the approach you take in your own communication with your coach?
My education, like in music, or
more so with fitness, like does knowing all of this and the functional side of things influence how you perceive the plans your own coach gives you?
Yeah. I mean, so I coach with Paul, and the plans that he gives me, they incorporate a lot of the things that I do as a coach as well, in terms of macros and pushing clients through the prep and then reversing out. A lot of like what the macro stuff that I use as a coach is some of what I learned from him. And also I feel like I can have conversations with him about, hey, why are we doing this? And then learn about, the why, so that I can incorporate it and be more I think education drives adherence. So it helps me to stick to the plan more so when I know why we're doing things.
Definitely. Now, do you incorporate like training? Do you change your training based around your cycle like you have clients do?
Yes, I do that. So I do, like, when I have my cycle, like I honestly, I don't feel great the first 2 days of my cycle. So I use those as rest days, and I do a lot of low intensity walking. I pull back my food intake to a rest day intake as well. And then I come back and I push really hard through that longer ovulation phase. Because that's really the time when, you're going to build. And then as my cycle is approaching, I tend to pull back a bit and deload, because I know my body needs that break and recovery because I've been pushing so hard. So yes, I do that with my training. And actually I program my own training for preps and improvement season, really.
Okay.
Paul just does my nutrition and programs cardio.
Got it. Now, do you think this applies to people who are on birth control or have other hormones going in and out of their body?
I do, just like with, incorporating seed cycling or something like that to help support the different phases of your cycle. I think, the more that we can do to help support our hormones, the better. So yes, I do feel like it can be useful for anybody. And there's different ways to set things up. But this is the method that I prefer.
I like it. Now, when you've talked about tracking macros, and this has been an influential part of your journey. It's something you recommend to your clients, something you receive from your coach. Now, when tracking macros, do you recommend weighing foods raw or cooked? And just how do you approach this throughout the week or once the food is prepped?
Yep. So I usually track things already cooked, just because I will prep a whole bunch of food, put it in containers into the fridge, and then I'll make meals from there. In terms of what I instruct people to do is that whatever works best for them, if you prefer weighing, raw versus cooked, just keep it consistent. Don't keep jumping back and forth, because then we don't know, actually what is changing. If you're having consistency in your diet, as we change macros, we want to make sure that, what am I trying to say? That the things that we're doing, the changes that we're making are what's impacting your body and not the method that you're using to cook them. You know what I mean? So whatever the client can be most consistent with is what I want them to do.
I like that. I think that makes it easier and takes off some pressure or stress to be perfect or do things, especially because it's like, from a macro tracking perspective, I sometimes hear like, okay, you should weigh everything raw, which I definitely understand that. So if you're cooking things differently, you might have a good measure. But I also think if you're tracking macros and let's say you prep all these foods ahead of time and then you feel almost obligated to eat them, where then it maybe feels like a meal plan, and that could defeat some purpose for some people following a macro plan.
Right, for sure. And you're right with the different methods of cooking. I've experimented with that a little bit. It's on my Instagram somewhere. For example, cooking with potatoes, boiling a potato comes out very different in terms of weight than if you air fried it or roasted it. And so you just have to be aware of, how your methods of cooking will change the macros and calories that you're going to be consuming.
Definitely. So do you recommend just keeping it especially consistent if you're on prep and getting closer or within a certain amount of weeks?
Oh yeah. So when you get closer to a show, that's like things need to start getting pretty repetitive, not just for ease of tracking and consistency there, but for consistency of how you're going to look. If you're jumping back and forth between, different foods all the time, one day you might be a little bit more full, another day you're not quite as full, bowel changes might be happening. So once you get closer into the last few weeks of prep, I definitely advise and do myself to have repetitive meals.
I appreciate you sharing that, because I think sometimes it can be overcomplicated when really it's like, just keep things simple. It's okay. Make sure your food's enjoyable, of course, but like if you overcomplicate it, where I have to now track this differently and that differently, we already have so much on our minds as competitors. It's honestly, sometimes having that convenience of just knowing things will be the same is so much better. Of course, not to go on autopilot, but just having that level of consistency and control for yourself and as data for your coach. And yeah, I think it's really important. And also I think that would help then when you're coming out of the show, because you can look forward to even more variety and cooking foods in a different way too.
Yeah, definitely. And again, like the last few weeks of show, eating the same thing, not over and over again, but more consistently, it's only a short period of time.
Yes.
So it's worth it to do it, just so you have the confidence of, I did everything I possibly could, to get on stage and look my best.
Absolutely. And I want to talk to you about training, because you incorporate a lot of bands into your movements. We were talking a little bit earlier about how you optimize your training and the phase that you're in. So can you explain maybe the science and reasoning behind using bands to optimize workouts?
Yeah. So bands can be a really great tool when the resistance for certain exercises falls off. So let's say, what am I thinking here? Like a deadlift. So if we have a banded deadlift, I should say without the band, let's start there. Without a band, the hardest part of the deadlift is at the bottom, when you're, bottom half, glutes are most engaged. And then as you get higher up, it's easier. So the weight, and the engagement of the muscle falls off. If you put the band on there, you're going to get an equal to, the goal is to be an equal to amount of resistance at the top. So you're essentially working that muscle in more of the muscle fiber in that full range of motion versus without the bands. So incorporating things like that can be really, really helpful in terms of stimulus for the muscle. And I like to do a lot of drop sets. So doing an exercise with bands until almost failure. And failure, I would describe as like, I can't keep good form anymore, lifting that amount of weight, and then taking off the band to where the muscle is not as engaged in the entire range. And then again, pushing myself to almost failure there, where I can't keep form to get maximum amount out of my time at the gym. Because again, like, we're all busy, we want to make the most of the time in the gym. And I think that incorporating that variety of bands and stimulus there is really helpful for that.
Yes. And to be clear, it matters where you put the band.
Oh, yes, totally. Yes.
So in like an RDL, where would you put it?
I would put it under, I would get one of the long circle ones, and I would put it on the outside, one end on the outside of each end of the bar, on the outside of the weights, and then underneath my feet. Does that make sense?
Hold on. Outside of the bar and underneath your feet. Is that what you said?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. You can also do like two separate bands hooked onto the floor and then the ends of the bar. If you don't have one that's like long enough to go all the way to both ends and under your feet. I think I've also done it with an RDL where it's under my feet and then looped around the middle of the bar. But just, you want that resistance to be from the floor going up, so that as the band gets stretched higher, the resistance becomes more.
Makes sense. And I think it's really cool that you'll incorporate those drop sets and going to failure in such a way where you can capitalize on your time in the gym and the stimulus you're under, and how there's now different points of it and different points of engagement too, from before you have the band to after you remove it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's really
fun. It's fun to play, really, and figure out, like, if I put it like this, what's going to happen,
Yeah, it's inspiring, like seeing you do that. I'm like, I was in the gym today and I was like, I'm glad to be talking to Laura today, because it'll give me like that accountability to add in a band. So I'm probably going to add bands to my glute workout on Sunday. Sunday.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I'll like record it or something, but I just think it would be good to try. And my boyfriend uses them all the time, and he's a trainer, and he's like, oh, this is so good, and he's always reading about that stuff. And then I went to the Angel Competition Bikinis fashion show to speak there, and Adam Bonilla came, and he was talking about the importance of band work when performing different glute movements. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna need to do this, because it does seem like a good way to just get the maximum amount of recruitment.
Yeah. I like chains too. I don't think I've done very many chain videos, but like putting chains on the end of your squat bars so that as you go down, the resistance gets a little bit lower from the chains because they're hitting the floor. But then as you go up, like the top half of your squat is quote unquote easier. So it gives, like, the resistance will then increase, the weight increases as you get to the top. So that's like another little fun thing to do, or on shoulder press, things like that. So chains are cool also.
That's interesting. So your glutes are in the most stretched position in the squat when you're kind of going down, right? And so as you come up from that most stretched position and that weight's increasing, it would recruit them?
Yes. I
have to put it together visually.
Yeah. Maybe I'll do a video this week and I'll tag you.
Yes. That'd be amazing. Seriously.
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be so cool. I definitely want to learn more. I was thinking I need to book an appointment with my boyfriend too. He could put me through like a little bit. I'd be like, okay, let's look at these videos and then you can help me. Cause also I'm like really weird about setting stuff up in the gym. I already feel like I take up so much space where I'm just like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. I have all the dumbbells and I've got all the bands. And,
right.
Yep.
But it's good because, there's no excuses. It's important to try new things, see what works. And like, I think once you master the basics and you get really comfortable with certain movements, it's a good time to try other things as well.
Yeah, for sure. Variety is important, not just physically, but mentally too, to keep you engaged.
Definitely. Now, before we wrap this up, I did want to ask what feedback you are working off of. You said you don't want to be told to grow your glutes anymore. So I'm assuming glutes. Was there any other feedback?
They said from the front, you look great. Again, just back, more volume in the glutes. And then a little bit with upper back, shoulders as well. So basically a lot of my posterior work I need to focus on. And then actually my last competition, I ended up getting too lean. So I've got to be careful of that. There does come a point, like with my metabolism, where it will just like take off. So I have to be careful of not, getting too lean in my preps. But Paul and I know that, and so we try to monitor. Sometimes though, it's like we can't do anything.
Yes.
So
well, I've never had that problem. No, I'm just kidding. Well, no, I've never. I think USA's I got lean enough, but I didn't have the muscle. And Sandy was like, you got to grow everywhere. She kept pushing back the day I should consider coming back to stage. I'm like, I'm going to take all the time off. It's okay. And I admire that you're seeing that for yourself and you're taking that time, you're giving your body what it needs to, and you're practicing what you preach.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
I think, long term, we definitely want health to be the focus long term, and not let this hobby, affect, the way that we're going to, it's a short-term, hobby. and, when I'm 60, I don't want to have regrets of, staying too lean too long or whatever. And now, I'm having negative repercussions. So keeping long-term health in mind is definitely important.
Yes. And like, I think about that too, where people are like, all or nothing, and all or nothing always leaves us with nothing. And that's even shown in research, right? Like it takes us away from mindful execution and intentional action. It's perfection mentality. It creates a lot of shoulds, and it's not healthy for us. And I think people hear you got to get like it's all or nothing, and they think that means I have to put aside my family, I have to put aside my education, I have to put aside my work, I have to sacrifice all these things, rather than saying I am capable of taking the approach that serves all the areas of my life in the most beneficial way and allows me to sustain this journey. And I think there's a time and a place for all or nothing. Like when you're in the gym and you're doing your cardio, give your all. When you're lifting, give your all. And when you're resting, do nothing, actually. But it's like also bringing that mentality to other areas of your life. Like when you're with your family, be with them, and don't like, you don't want to be 60 also and look back and be like, wow, I didn't take the trip to see my family. I didn't spend the time at the party. Like I decided I was too afraid to go out and eat with them because I was afraid I'd binge or cheat on my plan. Therefore I stayed inside, rather than getting help about that relationship with food portion or finding a way to make it work. You know what I mean? Like there's so many factors to this that we have to become well-rounded. Like, in high school, well, you obviously know this as a coach for middle school. It was like you teach kids, and as we're growing up, we're taught to be well-rounded athletes, meaning you get great grades, you can do extracurriculars, and you never miss a practice.
Yes, exactly. And I think like it's partially due, like, how are you defining yourself? If you only define yourself as a competitor, that's where things start to fall off in other aspects. Like I define myself as all kinds of things. I'm a mom, first of all, a coach, a basketball coach too. I am a competitor, but I'm all these other things besides, just the athlete. And I want to make sure all of that is seen in my life. So,
yes. Well, I've enjoyed this conversation so much, and I always like to, you're welcome, of course. I like to end the episodes by getting your best advice. So can you share your best advice for people who have never competed before but would like to, and then your best advice for those on their road to pro?
Yeah. I think my best advice for someone who has never prepped is to be open to experiencing new things. And trying new things. I coach a variety of people who have come in for first time prep, and they're like, I've never done this before. And I'm like, yep, that's okay. We are diving right in. It's going to be okay. And to make sure you get a coach who you can really trust. For someone who is on their road to pro, or maybe even a pro right now, I think the thing for me that I thought about all the time when I was, prepping for the opportunity to win my pro card is that keep reframing everything toward gratitude. Just being like, I think about some people who talk to me who, don't have the physical ability to be able to prep. They have injuries or issues or something like that. And I'm just so grateful that physically I'm able to prep. Other people who don't have the support system to prep. I'm so grateful that I have a family who, is interested and supportive of my hobbies. And that I have also the mental capacity. I'm grateful, to have the knowledge and, to be able to prep. And yeah, just keep turning it back toward gratitude. I had somebody ask me this last prep, how do you have so much energy and you're like a week out? And I was like, I'm just so darn grateful to be able to be a week out and to be, to be able to do this sport that it makes me happy. I can't be anything but happy. So I think keep reframing toward gratitude would be my advice.
That's fantastic advice. I think that's great advice just for anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably the beginners too.
Absolutely. Yes. And now can you share how people can find you, support you, connect, maybe even work with you?
Sure. So my Instagram is laura.tarbell.ifbb pro. And then you can DM me there. I'd love to hear from you guys. And then also I work at nutritiondynamic.com, and their Instagram is just nutritiondynamic. You can reach out and contact me through there as well.
Love it. I'll put all of that in the show notes. So everybody listening, that's always found at celestial.fit/podcast. If you're listening right away, this episode's going to be at the top of the page. If you're listening in the future, scroll down to the category section. It's alphabetized. Find Laura's episode there, and you'll see not just the links that she just mentioned, but you're also going to see episode timestamps. So you can go back to previous points of the episode, show notes, summary of the topics covered as well. So if you're sharing this with a friend, you know exactly what to tell them to look out for in this episode and why they should listen, which I always appreciate when you guys post this on your story, tag the athletes. It not only means a lot to me and helps the show to grow, but it means so much to the athletes as well. So it goes a long way. And I think it contributes to bringing our community together, which is one of the goals of this show. So I appreciate you guys tuning in again. And Laura, thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thank you so much again for having me. It's a privilege to be here.
You are welcome. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are.